The Academy never called it a prison. They called it Containment Wing Delta. But everyone knew the truth. No student was ever sent there as part of normal curriculum. No lecture, no training module, no safety drill prepared anyone for what lived inside. Kale Varan stood at the end of the black stone corridor, fingers tight around the strap of his data slate. The air here felt wrong. Too still, too cold, like even sound was afraid to exist. Behind him, the Academy guards waited in silence. "Final assignment," one of them said. "Observe only. Do not interact." Kale didn't answer. He had already heard enough warnings to last a lifetime. Do not speak to it. Do not feed it. Do not make eye contact for longer than 3 seconds. And above all else, do not, under any circumstance, open the inner seal. They didn't say what would happen if he did. They didn't need to. The door at the end of the corridor was not a door in any normal sense. It was a slab of layered alloy and ancient containment tech, etched with warning sigils from 5 different species. Some of those species were no longer alive. Kale stepped closer. A low vibration ran through the floor. The creature was awake. "You're late," a voice said suddenly. Kale froze. It hadn't come from the guards. It had come from behind the door. He swallowed. "I'm not here to talk." A pause. Then a soft laugh. Almost human, almost not. "They always say that first." Kale glanced back. The guards hadn't reacted. Either they hadn't heard, or they pretended they hadn't. "You're alone," the voice continued. "That means they want you to learn. Or survive. Sometimes both." Kale frowned. "What are you?" The silence stretched longer this time. When it spoke again, the tone had changed. "I don't remember what I was called before the cage." A faint metallic hum echoed through the corridor. The containment seal lights flickered once. Kale took a step closer without realizing it. "Why are you here?" he asked. This time, the answer came quickly. "Because I refused to stay quiet." Something about the way it said that made Kale's stomach tighten. He had studied enough forbidden xenobiology to know what "refuse to stay quiet" meant in Academy records. It meant rebellion. It meant massacre-level classification. It meant erase from history if possible. Yet the voice didn't sound like a monster. It sounded tired. "You shouldn't be talking to me," it added. Kale exhaled slowly. "They told me not to open the seal. They didn't say anything about talking." Another pause. Then, "That's because they think talking is how it starts." The lights above the door dimmed further. Kale looked at the seal. His fingers hovered near the control interface. A warning flashed across his slate. Classification. Non-content entity. Memory adaptive threat. Observation only. Something on the other side shifted. A sound like chains tightening. "You're curious," the voice said softly. "That's dangerous here." Kale swallowed. "Everything here is dangerous." A faint sound, almost like agreement. Then, quieter. "Then you already understand me better than they do." The corridor lights flickered again. One of the guards shifted behind him. "Student Varan. Step away from the door." Kale didn't move. For the first time, the voice on the other side didn't speak immediately. When it did, it was barely above a whisper. "If they wanted you to survive," it said, "they wouldn't have brought you to me." Kale's hand slowly lowered to the seal interface. He hesitated, just for a moment. Then he asked the question that would later be recorded as the first breach of Containment Wing Delta. "What did you do?" And the creature replied, "I tried to leave." Cale didn't move after the words settled in the corridor. "I tried to leave." It shouldn't have meant anything. Every classified entity in Containment Wing Delta had a reason stamped into their file. Escape attempt, hostile breach, mass incident, protocol violation. The Academy reduced living things into neat lines of justification, but something about the way it said it made Cale uneasy. Not like a confession, like a memory. The guards behind him shifted again. One of them tapped his weapon lightly, impatient. "Student Varan," the guard repeated, sharper this time. "Step away from the seal." Cale finally looked back. "What is it?" The guard didn't answer. That silence was answer enough. Cale turned back to the door. "You tried to leave," he said slowly, "and they stopped you." A faint sound came through the door, almost like a breath. "Not stopped," the voice corrected. "Redefined." The corridor lights dimmed another level, as if reacting to the conversation. The containment seal on the door pulsed with dull blue lines, like veins under stone. Cale frowned. "Redefined." A pause. Then, "They didn't want to kill me," the creature said. That would have been simple. Cale felt a chill crawl up his spine. "They wanted to make sure I never became what I was again." The air pressure shifted slightly. Cale noticed it only because the warning systems in his slate briefly flickered. Something in the chamber behind the door was reacting to memory. "You're not supposed to be talking like this," Cale said quietly. A soft laugh came in response. "You're not supposed to be listening." That landed harder than it should have. Cale glanced at the guards again. One of them had turned slightly away, as if avoiding the door entirely. Not fear exactly, something closer to discomfort. Like they had heard this conversation before and didn't want to hear it again. Cale stepped closer to the seal interface. The system immediately flashed. "Access restricted. Authorized personnel only." His hand hovered. "You're going to open it," the voice said. It wasn't a question. Cale swallowed. "I don't know what I'm going to do yet." "That's what makes you different," it replied. Cale hesitated. Different from what? From them. A long silence followed. The word "them" didn't need clarification. Cale had grown up inside the academy long enough to know who "them" always referred to. Faculty. Commanders. Researchers. The people who wrote containment protocols without ever stepping near the cages. Cale looked at the seal again. "What are you really?" he asked. The answer came slower this time. "I was a guardian once." Cale blinked. "That's not what your file says." A faint hum echoed through the wall. "My file," it said softly, "is not mine anymore." The corridor lights flickered again, and for a split second Cale thought he saw movement behind the door. Not a shape exactly, more like pressure against reality itself, as if something large had turned its attention toward him. He stepped back instinctively. The guards tensed. "Last warning," one of them said. But Cale wasn't looking at them anymore. "You were a guardian of what?" he asked. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. When the creature finally spoke, its voice had changed again, lower, distant. Of things they were afraid would outgrow them. Cale's breath caught. The containment lights surged once, then stabilized. "You're lying," Cale said, but there was no conviction in it. "I wish I were," the voice replied. Something metallic groaned deep inside the door. Not mechanical failure, something more like strain. as if the seal itself was resisting the conversation. Cale looked at the interface again. His fingers moved before he fully decided. The guard shouted behind him, "Student Varan, don't." Cale pressed his palm to the seal. The system hesitated. Then, against all protocol logic, it asked for confirmation. Override request detected. Identify authorization source. Cale froze. He didn't have authorization. But something else responded before he could. A second signal, older, deeper, buried beneath Academy encryption. The seal recognized it. The corridor went silent. Even the guards stopped moving. Inside the door, the voice spoke one last time before everything changed. "You finally came." And the lock began to open. The seal didn't open like a door. It unraveled. Layer by layer, the containment system peeled itself apart as if something inside had learned how to undo it from the other side. Blue sigils flickered, collapsed, then burned out one after another. The corridor lights dimmed so sharply Cale thought the entire wing had gone blind. Behind him, one of the guards finally raised his weapon. "Stand down," another barked, but his voice was uncertain now. Cale didn't move. He couldn't, because the air itself was changing. It started as pressure, like a storm forming in a closed room. Then came the sound, not a roar, not a voice, but something between both, like reality trying to decide whether to break or bend. The final lock disengaged. A deep metallic tone echoed through containment wing delta, and the door opened. At first, Cale saw nothing, just darkness, thicker than normal darkness, structured, layered, like it had weight. Then it shifted. Something inside moved closer, not walking, not crawling, approaching. Cale instinctively stepped back, but his feet felt unsteady, like the floor no longer agreed with gravity. A shape formed within the chamber, too large to be human, too fluid to be mechanical. Its outline flickered between states, solid, fragmented, and something in between that Cale's mind struggled to interpret. His vision blurred whenever he tried to focus on it directly. Then the voice returned, but it was no longer just sound from the chamber. It was everywhere. "Don't be afraid." Cale swallowed hard. "That's not helpful." A pause. Then, something almost like amusement. "It never is." The creature moved closer to the threshold. The guards behind Cale raised their weapons fully now, but none of them fired. Their targeting systems kept failing, locking, unlocking, recalibrating as if they couldn't decide what they were aiming at. Cale forced himself to speak. "I opened it." "Yes," the voice replied. "You weren't supposed to," one of the guards snapped. Cale ignored him. "So what happens now?" Silence. The creature stopped just inside the doorway. For the first time, Cale felt its presence properly, not as sound or pressure, but as awareness brushing against his own, like something vast had noticed him and decided not to crush him. "You see me now," it said quietly. Cale frowned. "I don't understand what I'm seeing." "That is because you are still looking with what they gave you." The words hit differently than before. Cale's slate buzzed violently, throwing error after error. Entity classification failure. Observation frame unstable. Reality layer desync detected. He dropped the slate instinctively. It shattered against the floor. The guards finally fired. Energy bolts streaked forward, but vanished halfway. Not deflected, not absorbed. Simply gone, like they had never existed. Cale stumbled back. "What did you do?" he whispered. The creature's presence expanded slightly, filling more of the doorway. "I did nothing," it said. "I stopped reacting." Kale blinked. "That doesn't make sense." "It does where I come from." A pause. Then softer. "And where you will come from, if you keep standing there." Kale froze. The guards were shouting now, retreating orders, containment failure protocols, emergency lockdown commands, but none of it was working. The systems above were flickering between active and dead states like they couldn't decide if reality was still stable. Kale looked at the creature again. Its form was clearer now, but still impossible to fully perceive. Not a beast. Not a machine. Something older than both ideas, shaped by rules Kale had never been taught. "You're not just contained," Kale said slowly. "No," it replied. "You're erased." A pause. Then, quieter than before. "I was removed from the version of reality they preferred." Kale felt his throat tighten. "Why show me this?" The creature moved one step closer to the threshold. The corridor lights flickered again, but this time they didn't stabilize. "I did not show you," it said. "You opened the path where I could be seen again." Kale's breath caught. Behind him, one of the guards whispered into his comms, voice shaking. "We need authorization. High-tier breach. This is not containment failure, this is." The signal cut. Everything cut. Even sound dropped out for half a second. And in that silence, the creature spoke directly into Kale's thoughts. "You are not the first student they sent." Kale's eyes widened. "And you will not be the last." The darkness inside the chamber shifted again. Not expanding. Waiting. Kale stepped back another half step. "What do they want from me?" he asked. The creature's answer came immediately. "To see if you will do what the others couldn't." Kale's voice barely held. "And what's that?" A pause that felt like the entire academy holding its breath. Then, "Decide whether I stay forgotten or become remembered." The corridor alarms finally began to scream. But it was already too late. The choice had already started. The alarms didn't sound like alarms anymore. They sounded like panic trying to become structure. Red lights flooded containment wing delta, pulsing in uneven rhythms as if the academy itself had forgotten how to coordinate fear. Automated shutters began slamming down across the corridor, but halfway through their descent, several froze in place, suspended like broken thoughts. Kale stood between collapse and silence. Behind him, the guards were no longer issuing commands. Some were shouting into dead comms. Others were staring at their displays as lines of code fractured into nonsense. In front of him, the creature waited. Still at the threshold. Still not fully there. "You said I wasn't the first," Kale whispered, voice strained. The creature did not move. "I said you were not the first sent," it corrected. Kale swallowed. "Sent for what?" A pause. Then, "To open what they were too afraid to break themselves." Kale's chest tightened. "That doesn't make sense," he said quickly. "Students don't get sent here. This is a containment wing. It's forbidden." A faint shift in the air. "Everything important is forbidden," the creature replied. The words hit harder than Kale expected. Behind him, a guard finally broke. "We need evacuation now," he shouted, backing toward the emergency exit. "This is beyond Class Delta containment. This is a system-level breach." But the door behind them didn't open. It flickered, then refused. Kale turned slightly, just enough to see the corridor behind him distort. The exit they came through was still there, but not aligned correctly, like reality had been nudged a few degrees out of place. He looked back at the creature. "You're doing this," Kale said. "No," it answered calmly. "You are noticing it." Kale's breath caught. "That's impossible." The creature's presence shifted slightly, as if studying him. "That word," it said softly, "is why they chose you." Kale frowned. "Chose me for what?" Silence stretched through the corridor. The alarms stuttered. Even the lights seemed to hesitate. Then the creature spoke again, and this time its voice carried something heavier, memory layered over intention. "You think this is the first time a student stood here," it said. Kale didn't answer, because something in him already knew the answer would hurt. The air darkened, not physically, but conceptually, like the corridor was remembering things it was not supposed to retain. And then he saw them, not physically present, not fully real, but impressions forming in the edges of his vision. A student standing where Kale stood now. Then another, and another. Different faces, different uniforms, different eras of the Academy's design. All of them in front of the same door. All of them alone. Kale stumbled back. "What is this?" The creature's voice softened. "Echoes." Kale shook his head violently. "No, that's not. People don't just. They do when reality cannot hold them afterward." The visions shifted. One student reached for the seal. Another stepped away, shaking. Another was dragged back by guards. And then, a moment of silence between them all. Kale's throat tightened. What happened to them? The creature did not answer immediately. When it did, the answer was not spoken lightly. Some broke the seal and could not return. Kale's hands clenched. And the others? A long pause. Then, "Some returned," it said. Kale hesitated. Returned where? The corridor flickered. For a split second, Kale saw an empty classroom, a desk with his name on it. Then it was gone. The creature continued. But they were no longer complete. Kale felt his stomach drop. One of the guards behind him whispered, barely audible now, "They told us they were failures, that they couldn't handle the assignment." Kale turned sharply. "What assignment?" The guard didn't meet his eyes. "The final observation task," he said quietly. "Every generation. One student selected. One subject contained. One outcome recorded." Kale felt his breath tighten. "So I'm what? A test?" "No," the creature said. Kale looked back. "You are the question they keep asking," it continued. The corridor lights flickered violently again. "And I am the answer they keep refusing." Kale stepped forward without realizing it. "You're saying every student who came here either broke, or came back changed?" "Yes." Kale's voice dropped. "And I'm next." The creature's presence shifted closer to the threshold. "No," it said. Kale frowned. "Then what am I?" A pause. Then, quietly, "You are the first who opened it knowing it was real." The alarms outside escalated into full collapse. Systems failing. Containment protocols dissolving. Reality itself beginning to misalign in small but growing fractures. Kale looked at the creature, really looked this time, not with Academy definitions, but with his own awareness. "If I step aside," he said slowly, "what happens?" The creature answered immediately. "I remain forgotten." Kale hesitated. "And if I don't?" Silence. Then you decide whether forgotten things stay forgotten, or learn how to be seen again." The corridor went still. Even the alarms seemed to hold their breath. Cale stood at the threshold of something the Academy had spent lifetimes trying to erase. And for the first time, he stepped forward. Cale's step forward didn't feel heroic. It felt like falling without moving. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, the world behind him stopped behaving like a stable place. The corridor lights fractured into uneven bands of red and black. The alarms distorted into hollow echoes, as if they were being played inside a collapsing memory. And then, silence. Not peace. Absence. Behind him, the guards were still there, but their outlines were fading in and out like unfinished thoughts. Cale couldn't tell if they were retreating, disappearing, or simply no longer part of the same layer of reality. Only the creature remained consistent. Waiting. "You came closer," it said. Cale swallowed. His voice felt thin. "I didn't really have a choice." A pause. "You always have a choice," the creature replied. "They just taught you to only see one." Cale looked into the chamber again. Now that he was inside the threshold, the impossible structure of the space became clearer and more unsettling. The room was not a room. It was a containment idea made physical. Walls that shifted between states. Angles that refused to agree with geometry. Depth that sometimes existed and sometimes did not. And at the center of it all, the creature. Not fully visible, but undeniable. Cale forced himself to speak. "What are you really?" The silence that followed was different this time. Not hesitation. Reconstruction. When the creature answered, its voice carried something heavier than before, like it had finally decided there was no need to hide the truth in smaller pieces. "I am what they could not classify without fear," it said. Cale frowned. "That's not an answer. It is the only one they allowed to remain true." The air tightened slightly, as if reality itself leaned closer. "I was not born," it continued. "I was assembled from consequences. From every rule broken to prevent something worse. From every containment that failed but was never recorded." Cale's breath slowed. "That's not possible," he whispered. The creature's presence shifted. "Isn't it?" A sudden flicker. Images surged into Cale's mind without warning. Not visions this time. Records. Fragments of sealed Academy archives. Deleted classifications. Entire wings marked as never existed. Names of earlier students erased so thoroughly they left no trace except statistical anomalies. Cale staggered slightly. "You're made from all of it," he said. A pause. "Yes." Cale's voice cracked. "Why?" The chamber dimmed. Not darker, older, as if it was remembering the first time it was ever spoken into existence. "To hold what reality could not safely keep in one place," the creature said. "Failures, anomalies, truths too unstable to remain singular." Cale shook his head. "So I didn't free a prisoner." "No." Cale looked up sharply. The creature's presence expanded slightly, filling more of everything. "You freed the part of the system that remembers why it started." Cale went still. Behind him, something changed in the corridor. He could feel it even without looking. The Academy wasn't just panicking anymore. It was rewriting itself in real time. Cale's voice dropped. "What happens now?" A long pause. Then, "That depends on you." Cale's hands clenched. "Stop saying that." A faint shift, almost like understanding. "You think this was about opening a door," the creature said gently. Cale didn't respond. "But doors are never the point," it continued. "Only thresholds are." The chamber trembled slightly. Not physically, structurally, as if multiple versions of the same moment were trying to settle into one outcome. Cale whispered, "What threshold?" The creature answered, "The one where something forgotten decides whether it should stay forgotten." Silence stretched between them. Then Cale asked the question that had been forming since the first whisper in the corridor. "If I walk away now, will you disappear again?" The creature's answer came softly, "Yes." Cale exhaled. "And if I stay?" A pause that felt like the entire academy holding its breath for the final result. Then I will no longer be contained by silence." Cale closed his eyes. For a moment, he thought of the academy above. The rules, the warnings, the certainty they had built around ignorance. Then he thought of the students before him, the ones who stood here and left pieces of themselves behind. He opened his eyes. "What happens if I say your name?" he asked. The chamber went still. Even the shifting geometry paused. The creature's voice softened to something almost human. "Then I become real in every place they tried to erase me from." Cale nodded slowly. For the first time since arriving, he didn't feel like a student. He felt like a decision. And he spoke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just clearly enough for reality to hear it. "Then I choose you to exist." The reaction was immediate. The containment chamber fractured, not destroyed, but redefined. The concept of forbidden collapsed inward like a structure losing its meaning. The academy's systems screamed once, then fell silent permanently. The guards outside vanished from Cale's awareness entirely. Not dead, not alive, simply no longer relevant to the version of reality that had been selected. The creature moved fully into existence, and Cale finally saw it. Not as a monster, not as a weapon, but as something vast that had been waiting a very long time to be acknowledged. "You didn't free a creature," it said quietly. Cale stood still. "You freed the reason the academy exists." A pause. Then softer. "And now they will have to decide what to do with truth that can no longer be contained." The chamber stabilized. Not back to normal, but into something new. Cale turned slightly, looking at what remained of the corridor beyond. "What do I do now?" he asked. The creature's answer was simple. "Now you learn what happens when students stop obeying the rules written to hide the world from itself." Cale nodded once, and together they stepped beyond containment.